Danny, I'll jump over to you. Your initial thoughts on the aid package, on sort of how you see this having an impact.
I'm a bit of an outlier here because I categorically say there is no chance that this can change the outcome of the war, and that it will only have a minimal, even delaying effect on the battlefield. So I don't even think that there's a path to a defensive strategy that has any possibility of outlasting Russia in any capacity. And the reason is very clear on the manpower issue. Russia not only has more men by millions, and they certainly do, but they also have more trained men, because they actually did something that I advocated strongly that Ukraine do in the early part of the war, which is that they should have taken a large chunk of men, like 100,000, moved them out of contact, start to train them up over between a year to 18 months, if they could possibly, hold that much patience, and then have a defensive strategy that would give when it needed to, but only to buy time for these guys to go on an offensive, so that they had a credible offensive force that was equipped, maintained, and trained. The critical part there is having a trained force. They didn't do that. They tried to do it on the cheap, and they did it quickly. They trained very minimally. And in the 2023, they lost the vast majority of everybody that even had trained up prior to the war, and most of those that had trained afterwards. So right now, you don't have to have trained much at all to be able to hold a trench line. You can train a guy for 2 to 3 weeks and teach him how to shoot, and he can hold a trench line. But he can't conduct even active defense on that line. When you take a look at what's actually been offered in this $61 billion, the vast majority, according to the Secretary of Defense, who celebrated this, that 50 billion or so of that is actually going back into the American system here. And only 13.8 billion was directly estimated to go to Ukraine. And in the first package, which I think has just been announced just hours ago by the Department of Defense, there's a $1 billion drawdown package. And it's a long list of stuff. I mean, it's got Bradleys, it's got 105 millimeter, 155 millimeter, all kinds of stuff, and a bunch more beyond that. Only $1 billion, which means you're getting just a handful of any one of these things. Right now, Mike, there is a 600-mile front, and Russia is on the move in almost every bit of that. At least 5 or 6 key points in there. They're on the move and making significant gains in recent days. Even now, than it used to be, a few meters per day. Now that they're getting half a kilometer per day. They're making much more rapid progress, because the Ukraine side is not just running low on ammunition, which it is, but they're also running short of trained manpower. They're running short of mines. That's a recent development I haven't seen many talk about in the Western media, is that the minefields that Russia used to break the teeth of the Ukrainian offensive last year had been used by many places by the Ukrainians on their side, but they're running so low on them. Now, all of a sudden, we're starting to see maneuver by the Russian side, because there's not enough mines to channel them into areas. And that is an alarming development, because if Russia starts moving larger scale, because they don't have to go inch by inch with men on the ground like Ukraine tried to do, now then they're actually advancing in armored vehicles and then putting them on the other side. That can't be sustained on the Ukraine side. This defensive this package right here has been hailed today by President Biden as being decisive. It's going to defend democracy. It's going to in our national interest. Only it's not going to make any fundamental difference on the battlefield, because you can't print men. Why I'm so confident in my negative impression of what's going to happen is because Russia has learned a lot in the last 2+ years. And they're showing it on the battlefield now, and they're conducting much more cooperative combined arms operations. They're putting their men at less risk. There's these reports every day that Russia's losing 900, 1,000 men per day, but I don't see any evidence of it on the battlefield at all. I think that's just kind of, we're trying to make ourselves feel better. But the reality is that Russia is imposing significant casualties on these defenses, and that's why they keep falling back, because they have these new FAB bombs. They have substantially 5 to 10 times more artillery in any area than the Ukraine side does. The drones are much more effective on the Russian side. Electronic warfare is knocking down reportedly 80% of the Ukrainian drones. So even though the numbers may be close, the effectiveness is way over on the Russian side. And then you have the air power, air defense. Everything you can imagine is in the Russian favor. The industrial capacity is just overwhelming and continuing to grow. And this little package here of 61 billion is not going to change those dynamics.